way to live vicariously through my athletes.
Awesome. And I guess that kind of leads into the first thing that I did want to discuss is you have a pretty interesting background in the sense that you sustained a really serious injury, but then you came back and were able to put up some very elite totals after your back injury, and it was a really bad one for those of you guys who aren't familiar. And so I think that offers a pretty unique perspective, especially the work that you were doing with Dr. Stuart McGill and some of the other individuals you were kind of working with at that time. And so I guess one of the things that I'd like to learn a little bit more about are what some of the big turning points were for you on your road to recovery, whether it be kind of a paradigm shift for you or certain focuses or different treatment protocols, anything like that.
Yeah, well, I'd exhausted the traditional go to the doctor, get shots, go to physical therapy, surgery consultations. A couple people wanted to do surgery on me, but everyone was pretty much saying you're done powerlifting. And I didn't want to accept that. It was affecting me. Obviously, I'd been competing at that time for 15 years or so, and I still had some things that I wanted to do. So someone led me to Dr. McGill. I was reading his stuff a little bit, and back then there wasn't too many powerlifters that knew about McGill or had worked with him. I mean, since you've seen a lot of people like J.P. Price and Blaine Sumner and Steffi Cohen. These people went to see him since, but we're talking 10 years afterwards. So it wasn't a known thing to go see Dr. McGill as a powerlifter, even though we knew of him. So the paradigm shift I had was going to him and him telling me that I was in charge of reducing my pain, and the way I moved and the postures and loads and the way I trained and the way I did daily um, movements was going to determine how my back felt. And I learned that pretty quick. And I was able to wind down my pain pretty significantly within a couple of weeks to a month. So that was one big thing. And I'm able to help a lot of people with the spine hygiene, as we call it. And some movements hurt some people worse than others, and everyone's different. But seeing Dr. McGill was the first time someone had ever spent time with me. When you see a doctor, you spend 15 minutes with them. There's just, you can't get anything done during this time. So I was lucky to get with the best. I listened to his advice. And, unfortunately, some people that I see, some people that Dr. McGill sees, I mean, we have a hell of a relationship. We saw 3 patients last week that were all really complicated with back injuries, a former Olympian, a 60-year-old woman, a 20-year-old kid, baseball, football, basketball star, and then someone in the middle about 40. So I've been able to work alongside him and build a good relationship. But if I wouldn't have got with Dr. McGill during that time, I don't think I would have been able to beat the split sacrum I had and the end plate fractures at L4 and L5 and the flattened discs that I had and the retrosthesis. I just had a lot of stuff going on that I had caused some of it. Some of it was from a fall. But I can tell you I wasn't getting better in the traditional sense. And Dr. McGill had to talk some sense into me and tell me, you need to back off training for a while. You got some structural issues you need to address, wind down the pain, and then maybe you get back to lifting, but I think you're done. And he told me flat out, you don't have anything left in your back. And I said, well, you think that I can get pain free? I'm going to return to lifting once again once I do that. Keep in mind, this is after about a 5-hour assessment of us spending time together, exploring the MRIs, exploring what I could do pain free, what I couldn't do pain free. And so I pushed back and said, well, when I get pain free, I'm going to return to the sport. And he goes, first things first, get pain free. Who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe we end up writing a book about it. And then I was able to come back about a year and a half, and I hit better numbers at 242, better bench, better squat, better deadlift, better total by a significant margin post injury. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do that. But some people out there, they just want to get pain free. They don't care about getting back to lifting, and I wanted more than that. So, um, yeah, I know a lot of things were up against me, but if I didn't have someone like Dr. McGill in my corner, I don't think I would have been able to beat it.
I think the one thing that you've touched on quite a few times is client care. And that's something that has been really interesting to me, especially recently, because I read a paper not too long ago, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but essentially it was delving into how frequently medical professionals actually utilize the, quote unquote, evidence based approach for client care. And it was something like 30% of the time, don't quote me on this, but it was like 30% of the time or 40% of the time they weren't offering that. And you think about that and you're like, that's wild. And then you think about like what I think is the third leading cause of death in America is iatrogenic deaths, or like essentially medical malpractice.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, like our medical system, our rehabilitation system has some pretty deep flaws. And, it really is coming back down to that practitioner and that client care that they're providing you. And I mean, the difference. So I have been very lucky where I've typically had really high quality physios that I've worked with. And there was a period where I had a really bad back injury and I went to a physio that was recommended by everyone, the best sports doctor, whatever. And that was the first time that I ever went to a physio where they were treating multiple people at one time. They'd come in for 5 minutes and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I had never even known that that was a thing before.
Yeah.
But now I realize that it's like really prevalent. That's how most people are operating. And it's pretty wild because I had zero faith in what we were doing, mainly because I just didn't know what the fuck was going on. They'd tell me stuff and I'm like, I don't know about this, but I couldn't ask questions because they only had 2 minutes. And so it's really wild. Like, so how do you go about when you're dealing with, let's say, an athlete or someone who's just injured? How do you bridge that gap between client care where there's just not that same one-on-one connection, I guess, or that trust?
Well, some people might know this, but I worked as a massage therapist for a while, full time, part time, and I still use some of my techniques that I gleaned 20 years ago. So I'm used to spending hours with someone. So that's the start right there. So you don't get a massage for 15 minutes, right? You go for like 60 minutes, 80 minutes, or 90 minutes, 120 minutes, or whatever. So that initially set the tone for client care for me to begin with. Because if someone comes in and they're wanting their neck treated or they're wanting their quad stripped out, you can't do anything in just a couple of minutes. You need time to understand what's going on with them, where they've been, where they're going, what their goals are. Are they a ballerina or are they a power lifter? Do they need to be a gymnast and mobile everywhere? Or they that's where it comes that's where time comes in to be able to build a relationship, even if it's just walking down the hall with someone or sitting down with them for a couple of minutes and understanding where they are, where they're going, and where they want to be. Some people just want to be heard a little bit because no one's ever listened to them before. There, no one ever listens. Like, say they go in and see the doctor, and the doctor immediately cuts them off. Oh, I see your MRI. You're fine. You're like, hold on a second. Can I tell you what I'm feeling right now? What's been bothering me for 10 freaking years? Oh, no, your MRI. I know what's going on with you. This is what people get when they go see the doctor. It's not like, tell me what you have going on with you, young lady. How are you doing? I'm not doing well at all. My back is killing me. Where does it hurt? Does it refer down to your glute? Does it go to your foot? When does this happen? Is it all the time? They don't answer they don't ask these questions to get an understanding where this person is. So, with my massage therapy background, of course, being trained by Dr. McGill, I spend time with people. A minimum, I won't do a consult with someone unless it's at least an hour long, and that's not even hardly hands on. Now, if we can get through some of this stuff streamlined through a questionnaire via email, and then we can kind of jump into it a little quicker, that way I have a background, then we can start doing some testing and then talk a little bit more, and then maybe some programming, some exercise prescriptions and such. But I learned right away from Dr. McGill, and I have an interview with him that's coming out soon, actually, where I ask him to explain the McGill method and all these different things. But the reason why the McGill method is different is because you plan on spending hours with the client to understand. It isn't just using the bird dog and side plank and curl up. It isn't just using, um, avoiding flexion or extension, because some people that doesn't bother them. So we don't avoid that. It's not everyone needs to do spine hygiene. Not everyone needs to stiffen their core at the big three. McGill Big Three is about assessment, giving someone a diagnosis and a prognosis, and then working to build the deficits and get them out of pain, return them to sport, or return them back to life. There is no, we never do reverse hypers, or we never do stretching. We never do this. No, it's all about what's going on. Sometimes the person has very little mechanical pain, but they have a bunch of hang-ups with their movement and stuff. We got to work with them on their movement a bit to free them up. So it isn't just about a one-size-fits-all package. Um, you tailor it to the client and their needs, and everyone's so unique.
It's funny because, especially with the emergence of the biopsychosocial model and how that's become a lot more I guess, widely accepted among clinicians.
Yeah.
There was a period there where I was hearing a lot of people kind of shitting on McGill's Big Three and a lot of the stuff that he was saying and being like, oh, it's overly reductionist, it's too mechanistic, it's more complicated than that. And it's like, I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, I understand what you're saying, in terms of, hey, we probably shouldn't try and reduce it down to like a single thing because that's not always the case. But at the same time, it's like, man, he's helped a lot of people. And I don't know how you could rectify that. You know what I mean? Like how I don't think that's by chance. I don't think that that's explained by just, oh, they just felt like they were getting treatment and therefore they were getting better. It's like I don't buy it. You know,
Yeah.
especially for athletes like yourself, right, who have to perform at a very high level. Like I don't know, I don't buy it. So like I understand the biopsychosocial model, big advocate of it, but at the same time I think there's a little bit of a push too far in that direction and a little bit of a, kind of a departure from some of the very basic mechanistic stuff that we actually do know. Maybe it's a little unclear what those relationships are at times, but I definitely think that there's something there, and it's probably a bit naive to, or maybe not naive, but I don't know what the word is, maybe risky to
Right. It's
abandon it
pretty
altogether.
drastic to just throw it all out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
I've heard the same
Um,
things, and everyone at some point gets really, made fun of or like called an idiot and all this stuff. But you're right. There's an overcorrection for a bit where people are like, "No, your back's fine." Yeah, some people's back is fine, and they just have a little bit of pain or used to have pain or whatever, and they're struggling mentally. I get all that, but just saying, "Oh, you're fine." MRIs don't mean anything. Pain mechanisms and generators don't mean anything as your point, not just the power lifters, but the people that have to sign NDAs that I work with and that we know Stu has worked with. We're talking NBA, UFC, NFL, MLB. Like the who's who of athletes go to him for their back, not someone that wants to give them a shrink session. They go to the expert for their back, but he can't talk about it. He has no reason to, doesn't want to, nor could if he wanted to. So, and I can't either when I talk with people. But here's the key to it: McGill doesn't see people that this worked for, that the psychosocial model worked for, or for the stretching model worked for, the chiropractic or the massage or the traditional PT. We see people that all that has failed. They've been told the pain's all in their head and they're about ready to blow their head off because they think they're crazy and they don't deserve to live. And then there's the other people that are said, you can never move again. Don't ever move. You're done lifting and all this stuff. So we see the people that fall through the cracks and these traditional methods or newer methods don't work for. And that's why we have a holistic approach of identifying the cause of pain, removing it, building pain-free capacity, doing a long assessment, thorough assessment, and then you come up with a plan. So yeah, some people can get better with that type of model, right? Some people can get better somehow because of their superior genetics or they don't have too bad of a back injury, so a little stretching, a little rest, they're as good as new. But I don't see people with that. I see people that have seen 10 practitioners and they've tried everything that we've talked about and it doesn't work for them. So then we start and we start fresh with removing the cause of pain. So that stuff can work.